sustainable climate?
Iko charge na nini na juu ya telecommunication na juu ya connection, ni mambo wa fondation ile Foundation for Climate Restoration, na ndio takuwa speaker wetu wa kwanza. So tena na share bila ataongea, tena share pale kwa screen, tutakuwa nasoma kisha anakuwa na explain vitu pale vile.
Great. So I am sorry the words in my presentation are in English. I wish I knew Swahili, then I would be trilingual. But there are plenty of pictures, so I will just point out the pictures and describe them.
Tania, just as a method, I find that one slide, you can let Mzili then translate and move on, and it works pretty well.
Perfect. So today, I'll be talking about youth activism for biodiversity and how that relates to agriculture as well.
Youth activism for biodiversity, njo sujet ile atuambia kujue njo itakuwa presentation yake.
So first, I want to define biodiversity, although I'm sure you already know the meaning because you're here today. I just like to take a step back and to really make sure we're all on common ground. And my favorite definition of biodiversity is life on Earth, because it's so simple and it just gets straight to the point. We really don't have life, which includes us, without biodiversity, and we don't have biodiversity without life. They really go hand in hand. The same thing with ecosystems. We can't have ecosystems without biodiversity. They won't function and they won't be resilient towards climate change. And the same way that we can't have biodiversity without ecosystems, we can't have ecosystems without biodiversity. So it's just great to point out how all of these things go hand in hand.
So na ataanza na kudefinire biodiversity, mais yeye anataka definition yenye biodiversity inamaanisha maisha hapa kwa dunia. Juu hakuna maisha bila biodiversity na hakuna biodiversity bila maisha. Na biodiversity inaenda na ecosystem na vitu vyote vinaishi dunia. Ile yote ndio ina forme biodiversity.
So when we talk about biodiversity, sometimes you may automatically think of animals, you may think of other species, not necessarily yourself. And that's why I love this graphic, just to remind us that we are really part of that cycle. In a lot of Western cultures here in the US, we see a lot of the red model, the ego model, where humans are on top and there's a pyramid where we are better than other species, we are smarter or other things. And so we put ourselves separate from nature. But as we know, that's not how nature works. That is the meaning of biodiversity. And that is why the way it actually works is the eco, the green model, where we are just part of this cycle. We aren't better than any other species isn't better than us. And that just reminds us again that we are interconnected. Like this quote says on the right, it just says that what we do to the planet, we do to ourselves, because that is just how interconnected we are. And so that's just a mindset that I like to set while we are going through this presentation.
Na ukiangalia ile cycle ya biodiversity tutakutana mwanaume ndio kujua. Mais chini yake iko vitu vingine. Mais juu mwanaume mtu aishi au juu manyama aishi na mimea aishi. Maana anaomba kama shie wote tuko connected. Na gisi tuko connected benye wao unafanya. Binakia kwa yeye unafanya kwingine manini, kwa vingine vinaishi dunia. Unaifanya kwa juu yako wewe. Ukitunza mbaya, maana wewe ndio uko na create dunia yenye kuna ma effects zingine. Na ukitunza mzuri, maana wewe uko unatengenezea dunia yenye kesho na itakukulisha.
So because of that, because we are part of this earth, part of nature, we have to think, okay, what does that mean for us? What is our responsibility to nature? And that's where this word of stewardship comes in. When we talk about agriculture, anything that we do really in our daily lives, how we eat, how we go about shopping, how we go about just getting the things that we need for survival, we have to think about what our actions do to impact others and again, all those actions, like we said, go back to us as well. So it's not only how are we impacting the earth and other species, other animals, but how are we impacting other humans? Because at the end of the day, we are impacting ourselves in every other action that we take. And so this idea of stewardship is what really makes regenerative agriculture and other agriculture methods that take the earth and take soil health in mind so special.
Na kuko hapa hivi kama mtu iko unapaswa kuwa stimani wasa vile kiongozi vile vitu viko pale vile. Juu ukikuwa kiongozi unapaswa kuwa na responsibility ya kupanga na kuangalia jinsi ya kujere ma resources zenye ziko kwa dunia. Juu ukiangalia kama uko mtu unapaswa angalia jinsi utalinda environment, utalinda nature, utalinda economy, utalinda sante, utalinda nini culture yote viko dunia. Juu kifanya vile vitu vyote vikilindiwa, maana wewe vile kiongozi hivi vyote unakuwa na create dunia ya kesho na wewe itakusaidia.
And so today I'll be highlighting a few examples of what stewardship looks like all across the world. And I just want to show this picture just to show the variety of people from around the world that are working on different ecosystems, from forests to oceans, to dry lands, to mangroves. So I'll only be highlighting a few today, but it's just a great reminder that people are restoring ecosystems and including agriculture in those eco-restoration methods all around the world. And so you're not in this alone. All of us are in this together, and we are one huge community working towards a common goal.
Leo atenda onesha mfano ya watu different ni wanakuwa sasa vile ba kiongozi juu ya restoration ya klima. Tuangalia mu restoration ya klima kwa kwanza zingine activities zinatoka selekiza ya activity. Sasa vile ile agriculture regenerative na kwingine activities zinaziko sana best mu agriculture. Mais c'est quoi atenda onesha mafoto fulani ya watu different parti fulani za dunia zilikuwa tumika juu ya hii restoration. Na ilikuwa kama vile kazi sasa vile badida ba restoration ya klima.
So the first example is of Charity Lanoy from Kenya. So pretty close to where you are, just your neighbor. And she is working on restoring drylands. And with that, she's working with multiple groups, the indigenous people in the area, the Maasai, the pastoralists, Global Landscapes Forum, which she is directly a part of, and another organization called Just Dig It. And I like mentioning these different groups because it's great to recognize that bigger projects can happen when we collaborate. And so like Paula said, we are here to support you in the same way that we know you're here to support us, because together we can get a lot more done. And what they are doing here in this area is digging holes, which are called bunds, and they're shaped in a way that help the soil absorb rainwater. And so of course, when we have less rain, we have to think about how can we take advantage of the rain that does come as much as possible. And that is what they are doing here. By making sure that the soil is getting that water and absorbing it, they can make sure it lasts a lot longer than if it had just run off. And of course, that would happen if the soil is degraded, if it's hard, and it just repels rainwater. That rainwater would get lost. It would go to a different area and it wouldn't be able to be used here. And so this is proving to be really efficient. As you can see in this picture, there are already plenty of plants because they have been doing this for quite a few years. And before this method, there weren't that many plants in the area, which means they couldn't grow as many crops. And so with this method, they're benefiting the landscape. As you can see, it's really beautiful in the background. They're also benefiting the people, the Maasai people, and everyone else who's growing crops in the area, because with that vegetation, they can actually grow more food. And so again, everything that we do to benefit the planet benefits people as well.
Na ataanza na example ya kwanza, huko huyu ni grupe ya watu anatumikaka na Wamasai Kenya. Yeye anatumikaka juu ya kuangalia udongo unyesha kauka. Haiti na ngati za kurudisha tena yanze produce. Yeye anatumikaka na Wamasai juu kuangalia historia ya Wamasai. Bamingi bafuga mangombe ya mingi juu afugaka. Na banaishi mafasi kwenye kuko kuna kauka sana. Na maisha yao yanakuwa kutoka huko hivi na mangombe yao wakati huko mvula iko huko hivi. Mvula ikiisha wanatoka huko hivi baina nafasi nyingine kwenye kuko mvula. Ndio maana maisha yao kutoka sunguruka. Kisha huyu anajua kutukana wale Maasai na strategy iko unafanya masiku jua kuangalia ile fasi kukusha kauka kisa kuwarudisha tena. Anaye kujua na chimba kisha juu mvua ikinyesha ile mashimo ilikuwa na chimba zinakuwa ziko na weka maji, kisha ile maji inakuwa nasaidia ni Wamasai wafuga mang'ombe na kufundisha watu wengine sasa juu Wamasai hao kazi yao sana mang'ombe, na ile saa ile mvua ilikuwa inanyesha vile unapata wasaidia ile maji wako wanatumikisha juu kwenda na mwangia mimea yao, ndio kazi ya huyo kunafanya na Wamasai.
And when I read that story, it actually reminded me of a similar story that's happening in another part of the world, in a different continent, all the way in Australia. And the funny part about this story is it's not being done by people. It started off with this little creature called the echidna. And so the echidna actually wants to find insects under the ground. And so to do that, they dig a lot of holes. As you can see, their snout, their nose is perfect for kind of scurrying around the dirt and seeing what other animals and creatures it can find, what smaller creatures it can find to eat. And what people started noticing is where the echidnas made holes, on this picture you can see plants started sprouting. And that's the same idea that's happening in Kenya. Because where there were holes, the rainwater would actually get absorbed more, plants were able to come back. And as you can see in the parts where there isn't green, it's a lot of brown, it's a lot of degraded land. And so this one tiny animal is actually doing a lot of work, so much so that people have actually started digging these holes themselves just to see if they can imitate what the echidna does. And this picture is actually work of both the echidnas and people holes. And so it's proving that we can actually learn from other species how to take care of the land. And again, not only that, how we can benefit us in the process, because of course here you can start growing more crops once you have more vegetation. And so we can incorporate wild animals and their unique traits into our methods as well, not just our own, but we can really look at this holistically. And with that, we can, again, expand all these movements and make sure that we cover more ground, because as we know, this is very urgent. The more ground that we cover, the better.
Na yengine fasi kule Kenya kulikuwa huu manyama wanakuwa kutosha Australia. Huu manyama kunakuwa kwenda na chimba fasi kwenye sasa kushakauka. Sasa kwa huko na chimba kunakuwa kuna acha ile mati yao inakuwa iko na create ule wengine manyama mwingine sasa minyoro kutu ule mudongo. Shajula kule minyoro kutu inasaidia juu ya production ya mudongo isha na kufa. Lakini sawa kama huu manyama kutosha tangia Australia kuleta kisha kwa nguvu ili wanaangalia strategy ya aenjo wasa kwa tunachimbia kisha wakati tafuta bila minyoro kutu hapo na kutetea mwenye mashimo. Ndio angalia udongo isha kauka aita ngeti za tena rudia inaanza tena produce.
And so another example I want to give about a youth leader is Camille Rivera. She is all the way in the Philippines. And because around her is so much ocean, so much water, she is actually restoring wetlands. And so when we think of agriculture, we may first think of all those pictures I showed of land, of maybe flat land, but actually we see that agriculture can be done under the water as well. And so what she is doing here in the Philippines is restoring wetlands, not only to restore the biodiversity, but when the biodiversity returns, then the livelihoods also return, because a lot of communities in this area are actually dependent on the mangroves and the fish ponds. And when there is no fish, there's no food for the people, there's no way for them to make money, and so they suffer as well. And so she actually founded an organization called Oceanus Conservation Inc. And she is also working with Global Landscapes Forum, which is the same organization that Charity, who we met already, is working with. And so these networks that are happening all over the world just remind us again how we can all collaborate. And here specifically, they're already restoring 240 hectares of mangrove forest, which isn't worldwide, may not seem like enough, but of course, little by little, we can work towards it being all the mangroves in the world. And with this, she is helping the communities right in the area be able to eat the fish and the shrimp that are in there. And so again, we can just restore biodiversity and restore human communities at the same time.
Na kuko wengine watu wengine fasi bale beliko Philip au biko na kazi ya kwenda napanda mamiti sana mapembeni ya mamaji Na hii mamiti kwa yanasaidia juu ya production ya masamaki. Tunataka kukutana kama sama samaki ziko yule. Zinasaidia tena watu juu ya kuangalia kama chakula nao production chakula inaongezeka. So yuko na basha panda desa 40 hectare hizi mamiti. So kama sasa hii mamiti inakuwa ya mingi, production ya samaki inaongezeka. Tunataka kukutana kama inasaidia kwa restauration ya kilimo, pia inasaidia kuongeza production ya chakula kwa sababu wale wanaishi.
So another way that Bio4Climate is supporting all these projects is actually through social media. And I like to bring this up just because even if you don't have access to land, even if you don't have your own land like I do not, you can still advocate for these regenerative agricultural methods and eco-restoration in your own way. And so one way we are doing this is by spreading awareness. And as you can see through these graphics, the one on regenerative agriculture here is actually made by one of our interns who is based in Tanzania. And the other one here is made by my colleague, Abby Abrahamson, who's based in Massachusetts. So Bio4Climate as a global organization, we're just trying to spread awareness in every corner of the globe for these methods. And regenerative agriculture can really be a broad term. It can really encompass a lot of other specific methods, but at the end of the day, it's all about just restoring that soil so we can have nutritious food. Because another thing that happens when we don't have healthy soil is that when we grow food, it tends to be not nutritious, not healthy for people, and we don't want that. We want to make sure that people are getting fed well. And permaculture is great for urban areas. Here where I live in the suburbs, we don't have a lot of land. So even if I did get some, I probably wouldn't get a large amount. And because of that, it's great to have methods like this, where you can have just a garden in your backyard. You can start small and just start with the resources that you have. And once you get more resources, of course, you can start expanding. So this is a great reminder again, that you can just start with whatever you have. And no matter what that is, even if it's on social media, if it's direct land, if it's supporting an organization or just supporting your neighbor, then once you start there, eventually you'll get to where you want to go. And that's what it's all about.
Na yengine, kila mtu anajua kama kwa probleme ya udongo, ambao unataka kutana uko na ujuzi lakini hauna nafasi kwa kulimia. Na iko nyingine kazi ya mtu zafanya. Unafanya kazi ya kutumikisha media juu ya kuangalia kama utafundisha juu ya regenerative agriculture, utafundisha juu ya permaculture, itasaidia hata unakosa vile ya avoka. Ukisema uko na ujuzi lakini hauna nafasi. Mambo kutumikisha media kufundisha wengine watu wengi uko nafasi juu ya regenerative agriculture ama permaculture. Watu wengine wanasema uko na udongo lakini unakuta nafasi ni kidogo. Inafaa ulime. Ya kufanya kule nyingine nini tekniki ya agriculture inaitwa permaculture. Maana nafasi kidogo lakini unaangalia nafasi kidogo ili usipanda hata vitu viwili ama vitatu. Tu upate miindi, usipata maragi, usipata kalanga, nafasi kidogo. Lakini kesi yako kujiuliza kama sina udongo, ndio naweza tumisha radio social media juu ya kuangalia kama naweza publier kazi au kufundisha wengine kazi ya agriculture. Au kama kuna nafasi kidogo, anaweza tumisha nafasi ya kidogo juu ya kuangalia gizi itasaidia juu ya production ya chakula au juu tutapata bili yote unahitaji kwa nafasi kidogo ile kuna.
So what I want to leave you all off with right before I get to my closing is to say that all of you, each of you has a role in this larger movement. Of course, the climate change, biodiversity loss can be really overwhelming, but it's a good reminder that you can take action and you can start today. And one question I usually get is, well, where do I start? And so I like to bring this graphic up because it has multiple questions that you can answer in your own life. And the answers can change across your life. So one day you may be interested in a certain type of agriculture. Another day you may start wanting to try something new, and that's totally fine. Because at the end of the day, this is a journey. This is often a lifelong journey. And we want to make sure that everyone is not only giving back to the planet, but that you're getting something out of it. And so that's why I love these questions. What identities do you hold? What brings you joy? That's the most important one, I think. What are you good at? What needs to be done? And what are your communities? So you can help your community right there where you are. I can help my community right where I am. And then once we do that, we'll be helping more and more communities. And that's how we get to where we want to go, to a greener and brighter future.
lakini juu ya kuangalia, so question kubwa sasa ya kujiuliza ni nini ndio unapaswa kufanya juu ya klima. Na ile question juu za kutana sasa leo unaweza kujiuliza ile question, sasa kwa kesho yake unapaswa uanze mpata solution. Question ya kuuliza ya kwanza ni identity gani ndio nini niko nazo. Kisha nyingine nini ndio inanifurahisha. Nyingine nini ndio mimi najua. Na nyingine ni nini ndio inapaswa fanyika. Na nyingine community yako ni yae. So après kujiuliza makestio yote, unapaswa angalia nini usafanya nifanye mu community juu ya kuangalia kama juu ya restauration ya klima. Na ile kazi ufanyia community yako, hadi sida community yako na kitu saidia dunia yote.
And I just want to thank everyone again for having me. I had a great time and it was great to meet all of you and to hear Swahili. That's amazing. So again, I'm from Biodiversity Climate, and you can contact me, you can email me, please feel free. I will use Google Translate to understand what you're saying. That's totally fine with me. I'd love to hear from all of you. So if you want to visit us, it's bio4climate.org. And we have a new project called ERA, or Eco Restoration Alliance. And what that's doing is basically what I've been talking about, is just creating a network between people all over the world that are doing this work, that are on the ground, or who are advocating for it, who are telling stories like I am. And so again, everyone has a different role, but when we all come together, we can work towards that common goal. And so thank you again.
So nasema merci sana kumsikiliza, na anayependa kabisa ingine siku akie aseme kila kitu mkiswahili, lakini anatufundisha polepole, anajua ingine siku sasa mtafanya presentation yake mkiswahili. Lakini kama unapenda muvisite page yao, njoo pale bio4climate.org. Amna kiko nyingine projet wanaita Eco Restoration Alliance, na hii projet ni tumika fast different. Watakuwa Afrika, watakuwa Asia, watakuwa Amerika, na banapenda hata shie wote tunaishi dunia iko different, lakini wanapenda shie wote tukiungana ile kazi tutafanya na njia moja inaleta matunda.
Thanks, Tania. That was absolutely fabulous.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. We'll give Tania a clap.
Oh, thank you.
Just a moment before we go on, Mzili, would you like to show yourself? We're realizing that I'm realizing that a lot of us here haven't seen you. I have seen you a lot, but
so you haven't seen me.
Yay!
So how about here? I am here.
There we go. Now I can see you.
We just wanted to say hello. I think everybody just wanted to say hello.
Hello.
Personally to you.
You're doing amazing.
I did. I'm so glad you did that, Owen. We wanted to see you, Mzili.
So I'm a bit far from the camera. That's why you're unable to see me.
That's fine. Your voice is coming across clearly, but I thought everybody should see who's speaking there. So fabulously in the background.
Please, Owen, Marius has a small introduction before we get the questions for Tania. So I wanted to have also a brief introduction, and then we can, because we have some questions to pose to Tania from what she has presented.
Great, thanks. Go ahead.
Yeah. Jambo tena. Yeah.
We first say thank you to Tania for that beautiful introduction and the presentation that you have presented to us. So Marius will not be able to be seen on the camera because a bit far from the camera, but he's just having a brief introduction to the people that have just come, who don't know what we do and what our objectives are and parts of the work that we do.
Jina ya association yetu Umoja Community Foundation ndio kule ndio inaanzishwa kule. Na tunatumika sana juu ya mlimo na ingine makazi fulani.
So we work in the organization called Umoja Community Foundation. Basically, it is the agriculture based in the way of climate restoration.
Na alors le monde a pas présenté na njoo wanatusutenir makazi fulani. Na leo tunaanza organiser maseminaire juu ya kupata ujuzi kidogo na kuonesha effort yetu tuko nafanya mkazi ya mwalimu.
And some of the presenters that you are able to see, some of them are the ones that support us in one or the other in what we do, financially, morally, and technically, such that we can promote regenerative agriculture and other activities in Nakivale refugee camp.
Na kwa leo tunatumika mu 7 village, kwa sisi tuongeze bien village ya 7 na tunaendelesha makazi.
We used to work in 6 villages, but now we have expanded, and currently we are on the 7th village because we have just added one more.
Na leo tunapenda kuimpliquer sana vagin parce que biodiversité hizi tunasema ni maisha tunapaswa protéger na shii inapaswa protéger. Na kwa kifupi ni ndio fondateur wa Umoja na mimi representant hapa Nakivale.
And today we are celebrating biodiversity, and we wanted the youth to be, of the population of the participants, the biggest part to be the youth, because we know the youth are the future of tomorrow. And as it was defined, biodiversity means life on Earth. So if we don't protect biodiversity, then it means we are not standing at the safer side. But Marius is the coordinator of regenerative agriculture and the founder of Umoja Community Foundation.
Tutapata tu kisio mbili juu speaker biko mingi sana. Tuangalie kisikia na kuendelea ndio. Kama kwa kisio posé Tania, tezi posé tu na tunaangalia sasa kuendelea. Objective.
So because you have very many presenters, so we shall not introduce a lot, but the others we shall be explaining them slowly. But now we have only 2 questions to Tania, and the first person has a question for you, Tania. So please listen carefully. The question is yours to answer.
On a posé question que on a chimamé pour ma présenter.
So someone who will be having a question will just come close to the camera so that you can see the person who is posing you the question.
Jumbo.
So good evening.
Julien.
It's called Julien.
Niko swali mbili.
And he has 2 questions, so he's going to pose you both questions.
Ya kwanza kwa jumla duniani nzima na kwa Afrika inawezekana kuconnecte umoja pamoja na bataalamu ama expert au maorganisation zingine zenye ziko international ku developper ma projet na ma initiative juu ya ukingo ya biodiversity.
So the first question is, we have had for the work of biodiversity to go very far, so we need connections and connection both globally and even at the continental level. So now he's posing the question, is it possible to connect Umoja Community Foundation so that what they're doing here can be connected to other international organizations and other experts in different parts of the world, so that what they are doing here can also be being helped by other people and expand their technical know-how and also their services?
Na ya pili, kwa kusaidia Umoja Foundation ipanue maaktivite na ma restauration climatique na ma ukingo wa biodiversity na ecosystem, kuko ma resources zenye ziko kama vile education sociale, technique et communication. Munawaza nini juu ya ile? Swali niseme kwa kusaidia Umoja Foundation ipanue maaktivite zayo na ma restauration climatique na ukingo wa biodiversite na ecosystem, kuko ma resources zenye ziko kama vile education sociale, technique et communication. Mnawaza nini juu ya ile?
So, and the next question is, to have the work of Umoja expand and the work of biodiversity to go beyond what people are doing. So can there be any help, especially on the media, also some resources and other things, so that the work of the biodiversity and the protection of the climate, climate restoration, and all that they are doing can be pushed and extended to other parts and all different parts of the world? That's the second question. So thank you.
Thank you. These are great questions. So the first one, can we collaborate and can what you are doing there be expanded? Can you, connect international organizations, international people? Yes, yes, and yes. Yes, and you should definitely, because what you're doing there is super important. I mean, it's great that you're expanding to 6 villages. That's what you need to do, right? You need to start small and then start expanding. And so, of course, these days, the best ways to connect is like over email, WhatsApp. That's how I got invited here. So that's just the tools that we have. They're not always the best ones, but it's what we can use at least. And so again, you can all feel free to email me. Mars also has my WhatsApp. If that's easier for you, please feel free. And yeah, we just kind of start from there, and we have connections that we can also introduce you to that that maybe more aligned with what you're doing, because what we do at Bio4Climate isn't only specific to agriculture. So we have connections there, but not only there. And so we can just guide you to where the agriculture people are. I don't know if you want to translate that first before I answer the second question.
Okay, so juu ya question ya kwanza, juu ya connection, anasema kweli ile inawezekana kuconnecte Umoja na ingine organization. Tukiangalia hata kazi tuko nafanya, tulikuwa mu village 6, tushakuwa mu village 7. Na kuko njia mingi ya kupata, biko na website yao, biko na email, biko na numero ya WhatsApp, ni akuangalia gisi tu ya kuconnecte nao, kisha kuangalia gisi utakuwa na publier makazi yetu na kuconnecte wafanyisha ma partnership na ingine organization na association ziko kwa niveau iko international. Maki kwa ile question mwa anasema inawezekana. So nataka jibu esa question ya pili. So the second question.
Yeah, so the second question, how could we spread awareness via digital means such as social media? News media can be a bit trickier. We at Bio4Climate are still trying to figure that out, how we can get, mainstream news to take our messages to a broader audience. But the reason I love social media is because it's in our control. So anyone, as long as you have an account, you can post whatever you want, and you can spread awareness for all the topics that you're interested in. And as someone who manages a lot of social media accounts, I can give you all the tips I have. You don't have to have like any expensive program or anything. A lot of the stuff I use is free. And so if that's something that your organization would like to expand on and you want some tips or advice, please feel free to reach out again. Yeah, I do believe that social media can be really powerful. And even if you don't make a lot of followers, a lot of likes, whatever, you're bound to get at least one person, right? You're bound to inspire at least a few people. And that's really at the end of the day what matters, because if you have a bunch of followers, but they don't listen to what you're saying, it really doesn't matter. So what I've learned about social media is just put your stuff out there. The right people are going to hear it, and they're going to take it in, and they're going to take action.
Anasema juu question ya pili, yeye anawaza solution tu ya nguvu ni kuangalia kisa kuisha reseaux sociaux, juu ya kuangalia kisa kupublia makazi yetu na kutia msite yao. Jumle vile au kama tunataka kusema vile ujuzi, biko na watu biko na experience kukana hapo, wakuangalia kisa kuconnect na wale bali wanafundisha ma techniques zimoja zinaishia tujue, au tunapenda tujue. Na nyingine kitu kuangalia kisi ya kuwa na ile page yao ya biko na page ku YouTube, biko na page, biko na site yao, biko na page ku ma reseaux sociaux ziko na kufanya ile itaje kusaidia kule mbele nao wakiangalia kisi sasa kwa connect na wengine watu sana ba trainer juu kuangalia gadgets ya kuongeza ujuzi yetu, na nyingine misaada za kupatikana.
Great. Were those all the questions?
Yeah, there's one more.
Hello.
Good evening once again.
Ya, ninaitwa kwa jina la Samuel
So his name is Samuel.
na niko na mie mambre.
He's one of the members of Umoja Foundation.
Niko na swali, niko na nani kwa buwili.
So he has a question, major question, but he also has two sub questions.
Ya kwanza nashukuru Tania kwa presentation yake.
So first of all, he thanks you, Tania, for your beautiful presentation.
Tunashukuru na tunasoma vya mingi sana.
So thank you, and we have learned a lot from your presentation.
Tulikuwa naongelea juu ya biodiversity.
We are talking about biodiversity.
Sasa explain.
So from your explanation,
Ulisema ni kitu moja muhimu sana na iko na importance kabambi kwa maisha yetu na ku restoration ya klima planet.
So from your explanation, it is seen that once biodiversity is protected, it's also helpful to the people who are living on this earth.
Na tukiangalia pale kukaliko yetu ama kubana, banasema biodiversity ni part ya maisha yetu hapa kudunia.
So and from our banner there, it can be seen. Okay. Our today's theme, it is seen that biodiversity is the heart of all the lives that people live here on earth.
Ninaona ulikuwa na wakati kidogo ya kusema ndio ulitaka sema vya mingi.
But maybe probably because of time you didn't have a lot to say.
So nilikuwa napenda nijue kama unaweza jisacrifier kukuwa na developer ama kukuwa na coordonner ma science ya formation kama na hizi. Duko vya mingi vya tujue juu ya kuconserver climat ama biodiversity. Kama unaweza jisacrifier sasa kukuwa na patia hiyo maformation fulani sasa zishie basheni na watu wanahusika na ile makazi ya mulimo.
You can at least sacrifice yourself for some more other days or some more other time, and you keep teaching us about the protection of biodiversity, so that even the youth and the people who know less about the biodiversity can continue learning from you.
Na ingine ya pili, unasema unatumika mangamu mingi sasa Kenya wapi? Umetumika fasi za mingi mwa Afrika vya vile. So nilikuwa pena nijue tena aende unaweza promouvoir na shie sasa watu hapa na Nakivale hiyo makazi tuko nazipata na kuendelesha makazi za umoja za kurestore climat na kuconserver biodiversity.
And from your introduction, it's also seen that you are experts in some other fields and you work with lots of people. So you work in the Eco Restoration Alliance, you work with the Foundation for Climate Restoration. So it's also our request if you can at least have some of the projects being done here so that the work of Umoja Community Foundation can continue in the climate restoration activities and the biodiversity protection.
Excellent.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So I want to say I'm no expert. Thank you for flattering me, but I do not consider myself an expert. I just consider myself as someone who's really passionate, like all of you. And so honestly, you're all experts in that, right, as well. And yes, again, we can definitely collaborate, share resources, whatever is needed for your organization and whatever we have to offer. We right now as an organization are growing, and just with people, we're getting more people from different places, we're changing ideas, we're adding ideas, and we're just being adaptable to what's happening around the world. As we know, it's getting more severe by the day, but because of that, we just have to keep responding to what's happening. So that's just something to keep in mind, that all of our organizations are just going to have to adapt to our environmental conditions over there. Maybe something that's working today may not work in a few years, but that's okay, as long as you guys, try different methods, trial and error. That's kind of what we all hope to do. So I don't know if that really answers your question, but yes, I think we can just keep learning all together. And of course, at the end of the day, like you said, it's about biodiversity. And so I love that you have that in the heart of your program and of your organization. Yeah, that's a beautiful picture.
Na juu ile yasema inyeko pale vile kuangalia gisi ya kolabore navo na kuangalia gisi nao wasipata maresource yao wako msaidie juu ya kuendelesha kazi tuko nafanya hapa hivi. Juu mule vile maresource mko pale expert sasa alisema kuangalia juu na she inafanya kazi yetu sikwenda napanda na sikwenda naongezeka. Gisi kuna enda naongezeka najua avec collaboration nabo na ile partenariat tunaenda mika polepole na kusaidia na shie kwenda naendesha makazi yetu. Yeye sasa tusema haiko expert hata tumite expert lakini iko njoo na ile roho ya kuangalia kisi ya kuproteger biodiversity na restauration ya climat.
Thank you, everybody.
So, merci wa kila mtu.
Thanks, Tania.
So please, Owen, the microphone is yours, so can just continue with the program.
Yeah, thanks, Marius. Thanks, Mzili. Just following on from Marius's introduction before, and just you could clarify, Mzili, I think there are 72 villages in the Nakivale camp district. Is that correct?
Yeah, there are 72 villages in the Nakivale refugee camp. So there are 3 zones, and the 3 zones have 72 villages.
You know, Umoja really has a long-term goal of impacting all of that 72 villages. Just for that sort of background of where that vision lies.
Alikuwa napenda aongeze tena kidogo juu ya introduction ya Marius. Jua kwa nauliza kama Nakivale yote mko village ngapi? So najua kutana kama Nakivale yote kuna village 72. So mem 72 vision ya Umoja ni kuangalia gisi ya kufika mwele 72 village yote. Mesionekana kama 72 tungali ku village ya 7. Mais vision ni kufika mwele 72 village yote.
And that can take, sorry, go ahead, Marius.
Okay, Owen.
Are we just passing the ball? Okay, and that's going to take some years to accomplish. And so I think what Tania was saying also, we're living in that type of life. We move from one phase to the next. Things are actually been rolling very quickly. And so it's great to see a lot of new faces, because we know that when the new faces turn up in the meetings here, that we're having some increased impact, and that can keep going until we've you know, really achieved that outcome of impacting across all the 3 zones.
So alikuwa nasema juu tufikie mwa 72 village yote haiko mwaka mmoja mwaka mbili, ni pole, lakini unashaka gisi tuko napanda basi tutakia fikia kule kote. So you wanted the names of all the 3 zones?
Paula has made a request for the names of the 3 zones and why there are 3 zones. Is it language or geography?
Now I can send it to her later.
Okay. Thank you. So
please, I was just telling Marius that he's going to send those 3 villages to Paula very soon.
Great, thanks.